Yes, there it is, folks. That's the tune known as Easy Living, which was the theme and title track of the movie of the same title that was directed by, or actually written by, not conspicuously not directed by Preston Sturges. It was a Depressionary-era screwball comedy. It starred Gene Arthur, Edward Arnold, and Ray Milland, and it was actually Preston Sturges' first movie. He didn't direct it. As I said, he wrote it, but that opened the door to the directing career that ultimately gave us Sullivan's Travels, Palm Beach Story, and The Lady Eve, many great cinema comedy classics. This was just a funny movie, really brilliant. I recommend you find it on DVD, download it, wherever you can get it. It's got perhaps the most hilarious automat scene in cinema history. Anyway, there it was, Easy Living. The title track later became a jazz standard, and I did my little feeble clarinet rendition, trying to keep the licorice alive. That's right. Welcome, everybody. This is, where are we in this grand experiment of mine? Welcome to episode 11 of Rebel Without Applause. And like I've said before, I am just a lonely merchant of mirth, an abstract and brief chronicler in this cockeyed caravan called life. And now, where are we? Well, it's a new month, September. Summer is yielding into the grips of fall, and here in La La Land, it's actually cooler. You can feel fall on the horizon if it's not already here. I had a great Labor Day weekend. I did something that I hadn't done in about 5 or 6 years, and that is affirm myself as this aquatic athlete. I did the Tommy Zahn paddle, and it's not a race, or it used to be a race. It's been discontinued, but the distance is from Zuma Beach all the way to Malibu Pier. And for those of you not intimately familiar with the coastal geography here in Southern California, it's about 12 to 10 miles. Let's call it 11. Like I said, from Zuma Beach down to, not Manhattan Pier, but the Malibu Pier. And I did it on my paddleboard, and this isn't my stand-up paddleboard, but my prone paddleboard. This is the old school paddleboard, which they have a very famous race. Actually, it's the least known and most important, I think, athletic event in Southern California, and that's called the Catalina Classic, and that's done on these prone paddleboards. But the Tommy Zahn run, like I said, is about a third of that, about 12 miles. And Tommy Zahn, if we're going to be into trivia, was a famous Southern California lifeguard, a legendary waterman, surfer, paddler, and he was also, for a short while, a contract player with Fox Studios, and he had an early affair with a very beautiful and young beach girl named Marilyn Monroe. So that's what I did this weekend. But the cockeyed caravan is still, well, frankly, it's more cockeyed than ever. The PVP is in full meltdown mode, and everybody in America now is filling out their brackets. Right. Who wrote the New York Times op-ed? More people are weighing in on that one than the NCAA tournament. And it's funny, I spoke with my dad about it today, and he's nowhere near a Trumpy, so I can't put him in that category. But he felt that the op-ed was out of line, uncalled for, that the New York Times should not have published an anonymous piece from a member of the administration attacking his very own president. For me, I'm not so sure. I think whoever wrote that, I don't think it will go down in history as the most heroic act of all time. I think it was gutless, to be sure, because just the anonymity was, in fact, a protection, disloyal to absolutely, but loyal to what? What should we be showing fidelity to, even if you work in the confines of the PVP? That's Putin's vice president. What is he but a tin pot tyrant? And I'm sorry, folks, but the presidency is more than a person, and my feeling is, in spite of the fact that it was anonymous, that the public interest, our public interest, far outweighs any sympathy I or anyone may have for that billionaire brat boy. Was he unfairly betrayed? I don't think so. I see this more as like I don't know, it's payback Shakespeare style, because, these are extraordinary times that I think perhaps call for extraordinary measures. After all, we're all in the same boat, and we have an unhinged billionaire brat boy behind the wheel, and he can sink us all. That's a possibility. And so I think the higher morality is shine the light on it, expose, let us know, especially pretty much affirms what, Woodward is writing about or had written about, and many will read about. It's just this full flower of insanity, and its absolute fullest expression. We're seeing it every day. And so, I'm for the article. I'm glad it was published. It paints a picture that I think most of us sort of already know. Either way, I think we can safely say that the PvP now is officially in full-on meltdown mode. To me, it feels, it feels like we have like front row seats to a Shakespearean tragedy, only it's live. Yeah, as I think about it, the whole thing reminds me very much of the Shakespearean history Richard II. Richard was, it's not one of his more famous histories, but Richard II was a very compelling character. He was indeed a king who was faced with conspiracy and betrayal, and ultimately he was deposed by his rival Bolingbroke and later murdered in prison. And he bemoans his fate, does Richard, and he's kind of like a pre-Hamlet character because he's very introspective, and he considers his space and his relationship with God and his mortality, and he indulges in self-pity and whining. And I imagine if he had Twitter, he would have been all over it. But this was like in the 1530s or so Twitter hadn't quite yet been invented. And this is like my favorite speech from Richard II, and please indulge me, but he's now faced with his own deposition. His own fate is staring him right in the face, and he's in front of his court, and they're dumbfounded as he reflects on his own mortality. Indulge me, if you will. Let's talk of graves, of worms and epitaphs, make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. Let's choose executors and talk of wills, and yet not so. For what could we bequeath save our deposed bodies to the ground, our land, our lives, and all our Bolingbroks? Bolingbroke was the prince who was assaulting him and challenging his leadership. Our lands, our lives, and all our Bolingbroks, and nothing can we call our own but death in that small model of the barren earth which serves as paste and cover to our bones. And then he gets on his knees, he descends from his throne, and all the courtesans are watching him and dumbstruck. For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the goats they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered, for within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court, and there the antic sits. Antic would mean like a joker. And there the antic sits, scoffing his state and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath, a little scene to monarchize, be feared and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit, as if this flesh, which walls about our life, were brass impregnable, and humored thus, this antic, this joker, he comes at the last, and with a little pin bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. Then he looks down at the courtesans and followers. Cover your heads and mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread like you, feel want, taste grief, need friends. Subjected thus, how can you say to me, I am a king? Anyway, that's Richard II. Thanks for indulging me. I never really got to do Shakespeare, so, that's one of those unfulfilled things I never got a chance to do as an actor. And so I'm doing it in my podcast because it feels appropriate to our moment. When Richard II, alone in his Pomfret prison, he's ruminating on his own frailty, his own mortality. Except, I don't know, the social moment we're in with the PvP, it doesn't necessarily feel to me like a tragedy. It feels like some sort of cosmic farce, as if the gods are playing dice with us mortals. And I'm certain that the stage he's in right now, which feels like I say in full meltdown, psychobabble mode, this is the moment that I'm relatively certain that some actor will portray this moment in the not too distant future and get an Academy Award. And we'll have that obligatory madness scene, the big meltdown where the Secret Service stare dumbfounded as the billionaire brat boy lay on the carpet of the Oval Office in the fetal position, his phone in hand, just tweeting psycho gibberish as Fox and Friends is blaring from 50 TV screens. Then he screams for his caddy. And Mike Pence, his caddy is Mike Pence, right? He screams for his caddy, and Mike Pence enters with his golf clubs, and he gets him to hand him his favorite driver, and then he starts smashing golf balls into the TV screens, shattering them into 1,000 slivers of glass. And when the last screen goes dark, Pence gets down on his knees and he prays. And then the billionaire brat boy reaches for his pitching wedge and smashes the portrait of his favorite racist, Andrew, I'm not Stonewall Jackson. Then he falls to the floor sobbing. He pulls down his pants, exposing his blubbery pink ass, and begs for his deceased father to whip him with his belt like he used to when he was 8 years old. But instead, his consigliere Rudy G runs into the room. Turn off the lights! Turn off the lights! The lights go off. The room goes dark. And then Rudy G grabs the PvP's hand, and they hold a seance to summon the recently departed spirit of John McCain. And then, whimpering, with snot running down his nose and foam bubbling out of his mouth, the PvP begs for forgiveness. When you were in the Hanoi Hilton, I was banging debutantes in Palm Beach, he whimpers. And then the scene fades out on a group hug as Mueller's men quietly and soberly escort him out of the building into a waiting van, which whisks him to the federal stockade, and the screen goes black. Anyway, that's my movie. It's just a movie, though. Truth is, we really have very few tools to remove an American president. The impeachment process, as offered by the Constitution, is clumsy and, frankly, has never really been successfully exercised to actually remove a president. Andrew Johnson was impeached, but not convicted, so he survived. And so, let's see, Nixon was never impeached. Clinton was, but once again, not convicted. And so it's never really been a successful instrument to remove a president. Anyway, if you get an impeachment in the House, you need 2/3 of the Senate to convict. So as currently constituted, not likely. The 25th Amendment has only been used on a temporary basis when a president is under anesthesia, let's say because of surgery. And then there's this emolument clause. And honestly, I didn't even know what an emolument was until this guy got in charge and he started using his office like a cash machine for his own business. Geez, I like to get some emoluments. Where can you get them? Can you pick them up in a store? We have some emoluments on sale. So, honestly, it's not like in Europe, where they have this parliamentary system generally, which affords what I would say is a more fluid and responsive tool to remove a leader. In Britain, they can offer up a vote of no confidence, which automatically, you're out of there. No confidence, goodbye, pack your bags, you're out of 10 Downing Street, go get another job. But our good old Constitution it's not that nimble in that way. It is, to be sure, an incredible document, revolutionary in scope and vision, but it is also an arcane document that actually, upon its original conception, very clumsily tried to reconcile the basic contradictions in our society. Take, for example, slavery. Now, this was a problem the framers racked their brains and imaginations to resolve. How do we do, this, equal rights thing and still, have folks pick our cotton and sugarcane for free? How do we get... And what's more, how do we get political credit for our human property? This was a big question, and they grappled with this question, and they finally settled on what today seems at least like a very weird solution. They offered that, this is what they settled on, that a black person could be counted as 2/3 of a person and a horse 1/3. So if you had a black person and a horse, you'd have a whole person. Actually, no. The 1/3 horse thing, no, not true. But yes, a black person could be counted as 2/3 of an individual. And at that time, what it did is that it allowed for the southern states to get political credit in the census for their human property, which provided an offset in political power against what were the more populous northern states where, they had things like cities. And the census, was the only metric to determine representation in the House of Representatives, which also, from which derives the Electoral College, and that's how, they pick presidents, and also allocation of federal dollars. All of that was derived from the census. So they had to figure out a way to account for all these black slaves. So, in spite of the fact that a black person at that time had no rights, he still could be counted for the political benefit of the folks that held that person in bondage. Up to 2/3 of their personhood was accountable in the census, as guaranteed by the original expression of the U.S. Constitution. That was the law of the land until the Civil War, and more importantly, the 14th Amendment effectively nullified it, which granted full citizenship to what did it do? It granted full citizenship to all people regardless of previous condition of servitude. So after ratification, blacks were counted as full people. One black person, one person. But this is the cruel irony of that. Since they were still effectively denied the vote, the cruel irony of that amendment was that the full counting of black personhood, actually, what it did, it strengthened the political hand of the racist oligarchs in the South and allowed for them to effectively perpetuate Jim Crow and segregation and lynching and all this brutality and terrorism for almost another 100 years. So, but nonetheless, the 14th Amendment was on the books, and the accounting was now even. And so, in spite of the cruel irony of it, I think we have to take progress where we can find it. And thank God, they got that amendment in there. Otherwise, just imagine today the carpool lanes, which require a minimum 2 passengers in the vehicle. Excuse me, officer, why did you pull me over? I have myself here and my friend. And the officer goes, sorry, your friend is black and only counts as 2/3 a person, which puts you under the 2-person minimum. You need another black person plus yourself, or failing that, 3 black people minus yourself to get over the 2-person minimum. But officer, sorry, son, I'm going to have to write you up. It's in the Constitution. Okay, what else? Louis C.K. made his first stab at the comeback trail. I think he appeared at the Comedy Cellar in New York, which I think I performed in. It's a little hipster comedy dive in the Village. Anyway, Louis C.K. showed up on stage, did his thing, which might amount to the very first tentative step on his ride to redemption, which, of course, aroused the ire of many. All of which begs the question, and I've pondered this, what is the appropriate time that a famous person should spend in comedy jail before they can be released? Is there a parole period? Does Louis C.K. get credit for time served, or is his adventure on the stage premature? I'm not sure what the statutory standard is for that indiscretion for comedians who jerk off in front of unsuspecting ladies who are also showbiz hopefuls. I'm going to have to check the books on that one. Actually, I don't know. The whole jerking off thing is something I do when I don't have a woman. But honestly, I'm not here to judge. By the way, did you know, and this is another aside, that pre-Christian cultures, they erected these awesome phallic monuments. As a matter of fact, I went to, at pre-Christian cultures, actually masturbation was a form of prayer. I went to these ruins in Vietnam some years back, Cham ruins, and they had erected these massive stone phallic monuments, and there the guide mentioned that masturbation, as I said, was a form of prayer. And I thought to myself, I had no idea I was so spiritual. Anyway, I don't know if that works, but my basic rule of thumb is I don't run red lights and I don't charge through yellows when it comes to boys and girls. In the personal land, I'm back in limbo land. I'm not sure where I am in my relationship. I think I'm back together again. Not really sure. I think you actually need to break up with someone like 10 times before you get it right. Make sure you suck every last available ounce of misery out of that relationship. I think what happened is we just sort of got stuck in this kind of, destructive pattern every time, of arguments. Every time I thought I got the last word, all I really got was the first word of the next argument, which is unfortunate. It's like, either way, she's still on lockdown, which to me doesn't feel good. It feels like what it is. It feels like rejection. It's just the way my brain is hardwired. It's like a binary system. It's X's and O's, on or off, ones and zeros. She loves me not. Getting it? Good, not, bad. It's that simple. I don't think my brain is, evolved to, rationalize and navigate those gray areas. It's that simple. So that's my life. I think one of the key things is to learn, if you're going to argue, which is part of the game, to do it with some ground rules, Don't get too out of control. Don't get too crazy. Try not to say things that you can't take back or things that will stick in the other person's memory and craw and soul forever. And, in our last episode on the bipolar coaster, I think she crossed the line. I don't know. She called me the dreaded N-word, narcissist, which I didn't think was fair. I said to her, sweetheart, on my birthday, what about on your birthday? I made you breakfast in bed. And then I came up to you and I said, honey, sweetheart, darling, it's your special day. What would you like to watch me do? Yeah, maybe I am a narcissist on some level. Anyway, my hope is that if she could just find it in her heart to forgive me for the stuff I didn't do, maybe we can find a way forward. To make matters worse, her puppy died, which is a very perilous moment in any relationship. And the second I got word of that loss, a little alarm went off in my head. This is a test of the emergency relationship system. Don't blow it, Bill. You're on thin ice as it is. One false move, a smile at the wrong time, an ill-timed joke on my part, an insensitive comment. She takes that case to girlfriend court. That is a capital offense, immediate grounds for termination. Yeah, you don't want to go to girlfriend court. It is a very peculiar institution. No burden of proof required. Why? Because girlfriend court is a feeling-based system. No evidence necessary, no presumption of innocence. If she feels it, you're guilty. No question asked. All appeals denied. Anyway, we're trending towards the ending. I've probably divulged more about myself than I wanted, but that's the risk I take when I turn this microphone on. The stuff flows. I think I'll leave you with one thought, a favorite joke of mine that I didn't write. And there was this old woman, and she was under a circus tent, and she had a wheelbarrow next to her, and she was shoveling elephant shit into this wheelbarrow, huge piles of steaming elephant shit, straining under the weight of all this fecal matter under the big top of the circus tent. And somebody walks into the tent and observes this, from the seats, and finally walks down, approaches the old lady, and she goes, "Lady, how can you do that?" And the old lady turns around and indignantly stares dagger at the questioner, and she looks at him and says, "Are you kidding? I'm in show business." And so am I. So on that thought, I wanted to thank you once again for letting me explore the netherworld of my brain, and hopefully I can shed a little light into yours. And if you liked it, you can go on iTunes and give me a couple stars or write a review. And we're now available on that's the three of us, me, myself, and I. A Rebel Without Applause, the Bill Kalmanson podcast, is now available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and Stitcher. So I can be ignored anywhere on earth, and for that I am grateful. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and I'm tuning out.